federal government is providing more details right now on its deal with Google. Let's listen in.
500 médias qui ont fermé leurs portes d'un océan à l'autre. C'est des milliers de journalistes qui ont perdu leur emploi et c'est beaucoup d'informations, malheureusement, qui n'est plus traitée dans les diverses régions du Canada. Partout à travers le monde, les gouvernements cherchent les meilleurs moyens pour établir plus d'équité entre les géants du Web et les médias d'information qui sont essentiels aux démocraties. Au Canada, on a décidé de passer la loi sur les nouvelles en ligne et je salue le travail de mon collègue Pablo Rodriguez qui a réussi à faire adopter cette loi-là au printemps dernier, comme je le disais, dans un contexte avec beaucoup d'obstruction et d'opposition de la part des conservateurs. Donc, aujourd'hui, ce que je suis ici pour annoncer, en fait, la prochaine étape dans la mise en œuvre de la loi, c'est-à-dire qu'on a trouvé une voie de passage pour répondre aux interrogations de Google sur l'application de la loi. Google souhaitait, entre autres, avoir plus
to their concerns about this act. We addressed their concerns about the compensation to be paid and dealing with Canadian media. It will be around $100 million annually that will be indexed to inflation. Canada also reserves the right to reopen the agreement if there are better agreements signed elsewhere. This is the first time that a mechanism has been so transparent and established, and it's really a historic moment. There was concerns that we would never get here, but I was always confident that we would be able to come to an agreement with Google. And we've been able to establish a system that is much more fair between the web giants and our news outlets. That's always been our goal, to create a more balanced business landscape. At the same time, we sought to protect the independence of the media. And before December 19th, when the Act comes into effect, we will publish the final regulations. This work has been part of greater efforts to ensure the long-term viability of our media landscape.
To make the announcement that I'm about to make, a lot of my colleagues worked really hard on the Heritage Committee to see this legislation, the Online News Act, land, even though they faced a lot of obstruction from the Conservatives. For more than a decade, news organizations have been disrupted by the arrival of large digital platforms like Google. In Canada, nearly 500 media outlets have closed their doors. Thousands of journalists have lost their jobs, and that represents a lot of information that has not been covered by journalists in different regions of the country. All over the world, governments have set up systems to try to establish a more level playing field between tech giants and news organizations, which are essential in our democracies. I'd like to thank this opportunity to thank my predecessor, Pablo Rodriguez, who succeeded last spring in passing the Online News Act, despite a lot of obstruction by the Conservatives. Today, I'm announcing the next steps for the Online News Act. We have found a path forward to answer Google's questions about the process and the Act. Google wanted certainty about the amount of compensation it would have to pay to Canadian news outlets, and I can say today that Google will be compensating our news organization with $100 million annually, and it will be indexed to inflation. Also, Canada reserves the right to reopen our regulation if there are better agreements struck elsewhere in the world. This is the first time that a transparent system has been created. Many doubted that we would be successful, but I was confident that we would find a way to address Google's concern and make sure that Canadians would have access to news in Canada on their platform. This is a historic development. It will establish a fairer commercial relationship between digital platforms and journalism in Canada. And I would also like to point that this agreement is the result of our government's work in responding to calls from the independent news sector. As our media ecosystem transforms, this takes into account the rise of new digital technologies and tech platforms.
Comment cet argent sera-t-il ensuite réparti? Parce qu'au départ,
How will that money then be distributed? If you're talking about contracts with the media, will it be an overall amount, or what is the mechanism? Google will have to see exactly who needs to negotiate agreements in Canada. But the regulation will permit Google to negotiate with one group that will represent all media outlets. So this would include all media that are accessible and to which the Act would apply. So including official language minority, media outlets, ethnic and independent outlets, etc. So Google will have to deal with just one representative. Question, what about Facebook? Answer, today I'm here to talk about Google. As you know, when we published the first draft of the regulation, Google expressed serious concerns about how much money it would have to compensate and who exactly it would have to negotiate with. We addressed their concerns and provided the clarification needed regarding the regulations. So we know that Google and Canadians will continue to have access to news on their platform. Question, which media will have access to that money, and will that include the CBC that already receives government funds? The criteria to be eligible for the law is in section 11.1. For example, official language minority outlets, independent media are eligible, TVA, and radio and television stations that produce news online. So Google is a platform that primarily shares links to articles to our news outlets. So I know that there has been a lot of talk amongst the different media in Canada about CBC Radio-Canada. I can't talk about the final regulation, which is now with the Treasury Board. And it will be published before the official implementation of the Act on December 19th. That will address those questions, but I think we are taking those comments very seriously. Question, you landed on a compensation of 100 million. Is that not a rollback? What we agreed on is the monetary compensation. Google will continue to offer services to publishers or media outlets. So this is added value in terms of monetary compensation. Question, did you bow down to Google? Answer, we came to an agreement with Google on a monetary figure of 100 million annually that will be indexed. Google has committed to support our media outlets with services of a non-monetary compensation nature. But the agreement there is to negotiate with the group of media outlets.
All right, we've been listening into the federal government providing the very latest details on the deal reached with Google in regards to the Online News Act.